Hi guys, welcome back to Econ Time with SK. So grab your notebooks, your favorite cup of coffee, and let's get started. Here I have a new example just to show you that the same guy doesn't always have to have absolute advantage in production of both the goods. So let's see here. They're basically two guys, right? Jamil and Hassan, and they can produce two types of goods, let's say. So cricket bats or toy cars. So here always we do the analysis column wise. By that I mean the question that we always ask is who has absolute advantage in producing cricket bats and who has absolute advantage in producing toy cars. So firstly, let's focus on cricket bats, right? Okay. So when we're choosing to focus on cricket bats, okay, so who produces more cricket bats? Well, clearly Jamil, right? So I'm going to circle that. Okay. Now, so I can say that Jamil has absolute advantage in producing cricket bats because given the same level of input, and in this case, input is basically both of them have a week, that is 7 days time. So having the same level of input, which is 7 days, Jamil can produce more cricket bats, that is 240 units, than Hassan, who produces 180, right? So that is about who has absolute advantage in producing cricket bats. Okay, now let's focus on toy cars. So let's focus on this. All right, so the question now we're asking is who actually has absolute advantage when it comes to producing toy cars? Well, in this case, which one is a bigger number? 700, right? So then we can see that Hassan actually has the absolute advantage when it comes to producing toy cars. So again, if you were to write that down, we can say that Hassan has absolute advantage in producing toy cars because is very important, because given the same level of input as Jamil, Hassan produces 300 more toy cars than Jamil, right? So that's, again, I'm just showing you the two different ways of writing it. In both cases, you are mentioning the number of cars that they're producing. Okay, it's just different the way you're mentioning it. So in the first case, you were saying, hey, you know what, Jamil's producing 240, Hassan's producing 180. And here instead of saying Hassan produces 700 and Jamil produces 400, you're saying, hey, you know what, Hassan produces 300 more, which is why he's got an absolute advantage. Both are correct. And notice that in both cases, I mentioned that given that they've got the same level of input. All right. Okay, so here's another example for us where we are going to use definition 1 to determine absolute advantage. Now, I've changed things up a little just to expose you to a variety of questions. And so here what I'm doing is, instead of using labor hours as an input, I'm using number of workers as an input. And so I'm looking at number of workers that are needed by Jamil versus Hassan in order to produce cricket bats or toy cars. Okay. So as I said, our strategy usually is to zero in on the good and then see how the two guys perform. So first, let's focus on cricket bats, and then let's see who has an absolute advantage. So in this case, always remember when it comes to inputs, we look at, so when it comes to definition one, which is about who uses, remember that is about who uses less input to produce a given quantity. All right. So here essentially we want to know who is using less workers. So here clearly to make cricket bats, Jamil uses 3, but Hassan uses less workers, 2 workers, right? So I'm going to circle that. So here we are saying that Hassan has absolute advantage in production to produce 1 cricket bat. Hassan uses less input, that is number of workers. In fact, he's using 2 workers compared to Jamil, right, who uses 3 workers. So again, notice, the answer is telling us, well, look, Hassan is the one who's got an absolute advantage in the production of cricket bat. And what's the reason for that? We are saying, look, to produce the same output, that is 1 cricket bat, Hassan actually uses up less input than does Jamal. And then we specify what is the input, right? So it's the number of workers, and we clearly are making a reference to our table here. And so we're saying, look, Jamal is using up 3 workers, but Hassan is using up 2 workers. So clearly Hassan is the one who's got the absolute advantage. So a complete answer will specify to me who's got the absolute advantage. It's going to specify what is the fixed output, and then it's going to, definitely make a reference to the table. Okay, so now let's just repeat this for toy cars. So the question now is, who's got the absolute advantage when it comes to producing toy cars? So once again, let's use the circling method. And so who is using less input here? Clearly Jamil, right? So basically it is Jamil who has the absolute advantage when it comes to producing toy cars. So again, let's formally write that up. Jamil has absolute advantage in producing toy cars because to produce 1 toy car, so here I'm specifying that both of them have the same target. To produce 1 toy car, Jamil uses less input, that is only 1 worker compared to Hassan, who uses 4 workers. Okay, so once again, I'm sure I don't need to point it to you guys anymore. You're pros at this. Whenever you're saying, hey, look, Jamil's the one who's got the absolute advantage when it comes to toy production, well, you always have to tell me why if the question asks for it, because both of them have that same target to produce 1 toy car, but Jamil is using less input than Hassan. And what's his input? Only 1 worker, whereas the input for Hassan is 4 workers. So that is a clear reference to what is happening in the table, right? And so with that, we complete our discussion of absolute advantage. And in the next video, we are going to be discussing specialization and comparative advantage. All right, guys, I shall see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.